Hi, I'm Jan Moore. I'm glad you've joined GC Place, and on behalf of the team here at the Governance Coach, we look forward to spending more time with you over the next months. This session is about governance. What's it all about? Let's start with what the word means. There are a lot of different definitions out there. I'm going to give you just a couple. One is the systems and processes concerned with ensuring the overall direction, effectiveness, supervision, and accountability of an organization. That one's from Cornforth, who talks about not-for-profit organizations. Another is from the British Standards Organization, which says governance is the system by which the whole organization is directed, controlled, and held accountable to achieve its core purpose over the long term. My favorite definition is from John Carver. He says that governance is the process by which a small group of people, that would be the board, acting as a group, not as individuals, ensures on behalf of the owners that the organization achieves what it should and avoids what is unacceptable. Now, after all those long-winded definitions, can we just make it really simple? What's governance in a nutshell? Well, governance comes from the Latin word gubernare, and that word means to steer, not to row. And the Latin, in turn, comes from a Greek word, kubernetes. Now, in the old sailing ships, the kubernetes was the person who stood beside the helmsman and said, "That's where we're going. And oh, watch out, over here there's a shoal, and over here there's a sandbar. Don't hit those." So the kubernetes was the person who directed the ship and protected it. And that, by and large, that is what governance is all about. So you can boil it down to really three major elements. The first one is accountability, that the board isn't there governing on its own behalf. It's accountable to someone else. And then the board provides direction, and the board controls. Those are the three pieces that you can hang everything else about governance on. I've done a review of the literature about governance in North America and internationally over the last 20 years. And while there are differences in details, there is wide agreement on some basics. And the basic things that there's agreement on are the accountability, the direction, and the control. So let's talk first about accountability. A board needs to understand its fiduciary role, that it is a steward on behalf of its legal and moral owners, and that is therefore accountable to those owners and needs to communicate with them. It also needs to report its governance processes to owners so that they can have assurance of accountability and have enough openness and transparency to allow for that accountability to be seen and reviewed and understood. The board also needs to evaluate its own performance. So all of that is part of the accountability. It's also accountable for underlying integrity of the organization at all times. So that encompasses values and behaviors. It has a responsibility as well to society and to the environment, corporate responsibility. So the board needs to ensure that it operates in a way that is not harmful to society, that is sustainable, ethical, and responsible. This is a more recent addition to what is considered the responsibilities of a board, but it's certainly common now in virtually all of the literature that you run into. So that's accountability. The second piece is setting direction. So it's the board's responsibility to clarify the purpose of the organization, its values, in consultation with those on whose behalf it's governing. It needs to clearly define the mission and the goals because they should drive virtually everything that's done. So most of the board time should be spent on that future-oriented, mission and goal-directed thinking rather than day-to-day activities. And the board needs to receive the information that's necessary in order to set that kind of clear direction. The third element is control. the board is accountable to ensure protection of the organization's assets. So that means identifying the principal risks to the organization and identifying the risk appetite and ensuring a risk management system is in place. That includes, of course, making sure that there is a system of internal controls to protect the assets and that the board receives timely information to ensure that protection in a useful format of the information. The board also needs to ensure clear separation of governance and management functions. So that's best done by establishing a policy framework that sets out a clear division of responsibilities so that the board governs and the executive manages. This clear delegation allows for good accountability, which is very important to control. A key role of governing is assessing the actual performance against the stated expectations. The board is also responsible for ensuring that there is a CEO, hiring the CEO, and ensuring CEO compensation and succession. So they should have formal processes to review the CEO's performance and compensation and ensure that there is a senior management team in place to allow for good governance succession. To summarize all of this, I go to the British Standards Institution. This is the UK's national standards body, and it has been responsible for originating many of the world's most popular management system standards. In 2013, they developed something called the Code of Practice for Delivering Effective Governance of Organizations, which basically extracts all the must-haves from all the large corporate codes that apply universally. And it's the most recent and the most coherent international work on delivering effective governance. So what does the British Standards Institution say? In summary, it says that effective governance should clarify the organization's purpose and values in consultation with those on whose behalf it exists. It should identify the risks involved in fulfilling that purpose in alignment with its values. It should direct and control the organization in a manner that enables proper recording. And finally, this is a mouthful, that it should be integrated into a single, holistic, open, forward-looking, effective, efficient, and empowering system that starts and ends with accountability. That's all until next time.